Hi, my name is Deb from DG Reads, and this is my costume queen furry sidekick Kylie, and we're here today to kick off a vlog for Halloween-A-Thon. Halloween-A-Thon is a fantastic and very creative readathon put together by Kelsi from Slime and Slashers, and she did inspire the costume I chose for Kylie for this intro because Kelsi's channel has a lot about nostalgia and bright colors and fun, and I think this costume, 80s Kylie, definitely works. But I'm gonna let Kylie get down, have her treat, and I'll talk to you a little bit more. She's ready for all the spooky good times coming into Halloween-A-Thon, but mostly I think right now she's wanting the treat. So if you saw my TBR for October, you saw my first roll there. It's actually still September. It is the first day of fall today, and the readathon has already started. So even though I did pick my first book in that TBR, I'm actually going to have finished it before October. That's fine. I'm okay with that. You'll never know because this vlog is going to go up well after the fact. Well, you'll know because I just told you. But other than that, you'll never know. But the first thing that I rolled was a color wheel, which is something that I added to this hybrid board where I combined some of the readathon prompts with my own prompts. And for that, I spun a color wheel. It gave me dark green. And the book that I picked up was The Forest Grimm by Catherine Purdy. And this is not horror, which is where I really want to kind of be reading this month, but it's dark fantasy, a dark twist on a fairy tale. And so it's still giving me those spooky vibes, and I think it works fine for this. I am actually already halfway through this one, so I'm a little bit ahead of the game, and I've been watching the kickoff sprints for the readathon, getting a few things done because it's Sunday afternoon, but a lot of reading is happening as well. In this one, we are following Clara, and she is a young woman whose mother has gone missing. She and her mother both have the same fortune that her fortune teller grandmother has read for them in the cards, and it is to basically have something go wrong with them in the forest, to die young. It's not a good fortune to be had. And her mother has now gone missing into this forest. The forest is a place of magic. The town has historically had a magical book. If you told it your deepest desire, the book would tell you how to achieve that. It had to be kept secret. They didn't want other people to know about it, and it was meant to fulfill desires. Someone, however, used it for evil and everything went wrong. The forest took this book from them, locked it away, and in the years since, they've always sent someone into the woods to try to retrieve it, and no one has come back successful. So Clara's convinced that she's going to be pulled into the woods as the next person. She's going to go in and she's going to find her missing mother, and this is her deepest desire. Things don't go exactly according to plan, but we are spending time in the forest. And along with her is Axel, who is one of her best friends, and there's some potential there for romance. There's a little bit of friends to lovers potential here, even though neither one really seems to be willing to vocalize what they're feeling. I am liking this so far. It's a really easy, quick listen. I have this one actually on audio. Thank you to Macmillan Audio for that. And then of course I have this really pretty fairy lit edition that I'm following along with. And I like the fairy tale vibes. I like the darkness. I like the twist to trying to figure out what's going on as they meet people in the forest or things in the forest. And it's intriguing me. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep reading and be back once I finish this one so I can roll my next prompt. Happy second day of fall. I have a couple updates for you for Halloween-A-Thon, and the first being that I finished up The Forest Grimm. Now, I'm not going to say this was the best book ever, but it was a fun read. I liked the dark fairy tale twists in here, and the fact that there were some recognizable fairy tale tropes and kind of character types in here really worked well for me. It was a great easy listen, a little bit predictable on the relationship level, which doesn't surprise me for YA fantasy romance too much, but the story kept me entertained. There were some twists that I did not anticipate, and I do think I will probably pick up the sequel at some point. I don't think it's out yet, so I will be looking for that in the future, but one book down, success. I think this one is getting about a 3.5 from me. It's not by any means a new favorite, but it's one I had fun with. So for roll number 2, I landed on the dice square on the board, and that just means I get to roll again with the hope of advancing myself further into the board. The second roll landed me on a shark because I only rolled a 1, so it didn't advance me a whole lot. But I got a shark, which symbolizes my Shark Attack series where I read arcs. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up The Mirror by Nora Roberts. This is a sequel following Inheritance in her Lost Brides trilogy, and this is a good one for spooky season because it's all about a haunted house, but it's a house haunted by good ghosts and also a bad ghost. So I can't say too much about it. Our main character, Sonia, has found out that her father, who has passed away, had a twin brother he didn't know anything about, and this brother has left her a house. And in researching this house, she finds out about its past and the fact that all of the women in this house have had a curse to die on or shortly after their wedding day, I believe. So the ghosts of all of these women inhabit this house, and they help with the house cleaning, and they play music to communicate, and there's a lot of really fun ghost aspects, but there's also a really bitter ghost that is causing havoc as well. So the story is fun. There's, by the sequel, an established relationship going on, and they know what's going on. They're just trying to get more answers. So I've been excited to read this one. The first one ended on a cliffhanger, and I will be picking this up. I'll be back when I finish this one. I don't think I'll have a lot of midway thoughts, especially since this is a sequel, and this vlog is already going to be long. I'm planning on a lot of rolls, so we'll check in when I'm ready for my next one. I have now finished The Mirror, which was my pick for an arc for Halloween-A-Thon, and I had fun with this one. I think it did a good job of picking up where book 1 kind of left off, and it built on the relationships that came out of book 1, advanced some of them, developed a few more connections. I think we got a little bit of investigation into the family history that was interesting to read about. The ghosts in the house are just a lot of fun for the most part. One of them communicates with the main character through music. So you frequently will just get snippets of songs that she'll mention the title of or a line from, and it's the ghost trying to tell them something. So when they do something good, they might get "We Are the Champions," or if the ghost wants to identify who they are, they might pick a song with the name in the title or by a certain artist with that name. So it's really fun to kind of pick up different things and pop culture references and that type of stuff in the text. The malevolent spirit that's in the house is definitely creepy. There's a lot going on with that particular character, and there are some really creepy moments where maybe somebody gets split up, where the characters are feeling a sense of danger. With a Nora Roberts book, I don't expect there to be high stakes. I don't expect a main character to die or the animals in these books to be in jeopardy, but there are some fun moments with that. I do think at times it felt a little long. There's a lot of the kind of slice of life moments with these characters, and it's cozy, which isn't always what I go for, but I enjoy these characters. I enjoy the setting, the ghost premise of this all, and enjoyed my time. So with that, I went ahead and rolled again, and I got another 1. We're not making a lot of progress here. And for that, I landed on the switch space, which means that I count a book that I'm using for a different readathon. So for that, for now, I'm not really picking a book for that because basically any book I'm reading for any other readathon would fulfill that spot. So I'm obviously going to fulfill that spot, but the other readathons haven't started yet. I suppose I could count one of the ones for Magical Readathon in September that I still am finishing, but I'm not going to worry too much about that now, and rolled again. And that roll took me to the little Kylie costume square. And this is really exciting because this means that I am pairing Kylie in a costume with a book pick. So this is something I actually did a whole vlog on, letting Kylie costumes control what I was reading, and I will give you a link for that because that will already have been up by now. But the idea is to put her in a cute costume and then go for a book that somehow works with it thematically or however I want to make the connection. So let me show you Kylie. This is little monster Kylie, and she's adorable. That's all I have to say about it. She is very cute. But to match this costume, I'm gonna go with a book with monster in the title, and that is The Monster in the Mirror, Mental Illness, Magic, and the Stories We Tell. And this is by KJ Iao. And this is part memoir, part essays, really taking a look at her own life and her own battles with mental health, but also looking at mainstream media and looking at the way mainstream media and movies and books look at mental health and how they look at anyone who's considered kind of other. And I work in mental health, so picking up titles that address mental illness is something that I always like to try to do. I saw this on NetGalley and was gifted a copy from ECW Press Audio, and I am looking forward to reading this one, and I'll check back in once I have. I have now finished up The Monster in the Mirror, and I didn't do any midway thoughts because with a memoir, with essays, I just figured like my midway thoughts aren't going to be super different. So my thoughts for the ending are that this was a fantastic book. I thought it was really well researched, really well thought through, really well written. I thought the combination of memoir and her sharing her own personal stories and what she's been through with her mental health, with her relationships, with her depression, with suicide attempts, and lots of things really came through in a way that I think gives a glimpse into what someone with a diagnosis of mental illness goes through. I also really enjoyed hearing her take on different forms of entertainment and how that intersects with mental illness in particular, but also she talks about other things like being queer, having an addiction. She talks about movies and books and television shows and video games. And there were a lot of things I thought were really insightful and again, well thought out. There are an hour in this audiobook of notes at the end of different references and things like that. So I thought I had a whole hour left to listen to. I'm not going to listen to all the references, but that again shows how much was really put into everything she compiled in this book. So I would highly recommend this if you have an interest in nonfiction, if you have an interest in mental health, in fantasy, in popular entertainment in general. I think this was a great book and one I'd recommend. Finishing up my monster book means that I got to roll again. And for my next roll, I got a 1, and we are clearly just zooming around this board with all these 1s. I might have to try changing dice because this die really likes the 1. But anyway, that landed me on spot 13, my first actual prompt from the read-a-thon. So this is one of the prompts from Georgie's Lake, and the prompt is The Great Pumpkin. Read or watch a book or movie with a pumpkin on the cover or on the movie poster. So I think since we're not making a lot of progress, I'm gonna go ahead and find something to watch for this and go ahead and roll again. So who's surprised? I got another 1, and that landed me on spot 14. And this one again is a prompt from the readathon, and it's Wheel of Doom. Use a spinner wheel to pick your next read or watch. So I think I will go ahead and pick a book. I've already created a spinner wheel for Spookopoly, and I think I'm just gonna go ahead and spin that for this. So let's do that. Okay, so these are my chance cards for Spookopoly, and I'm going to screen record and ready, set, and spin. Okay, I got Daughters of Olympus, which actually I think is right behind me, so let me find that. Okay, so Daughters of Olympus is a book that I got from Once Upon a Book Club, and if you don't know this one, I've mentioned it a few times, so I won't talk too much, but basically it's a book. Obviously, it's a book. But as you're reading the book, it gives you places where you can open the gifts that came with the book. So this is a subscription I really enjoy. It pushes me out of my comfort zone with some regularity, but they do also sometimes send books that I've been highly anticipating, so it's a good mix of that, and you get these little post-its like this. If you are interested, I do have a discount code, which is just DGReads10, and you get a discount on your first order. But this says Demeter is a goddess of life, living half of one. All I know, it's kind of a retelling of Hades and Persephone, but with a focus on the women, I think. This definitely isn't spooky, but it very much has fall kind of vibes on the cover and the colors, so not too mad about this one, and I'll be back once I have have thoughts. And I will let you know also what I found in terms of watching for a pumpkin on the cover. I'm back with some updates for Halloween-A-Thon, and first things first, I did indeed find a movie with a pumpkin on the movie poster, and that was The Curse of Bridge Hollow, and it was fun, cheesy, family-friendly entertainment, basically. I really appreciated there's a nod to Killer Clowns in this, and I love Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's an old favorite of mine, so that was fun, and just generally, it was a good time. Kylie and I just kind of snuggled up, watched, and it was a good excuse to just take a reading break. And then I have started Daughters of Olympus. I'm actually a little bit past the halfway point. Not going to say too much about it at this point. We're following Demeter for the first half of the book. Then shortly before I stopped, it switched to Persephone's story and her POV. Personal preference, I don't love it when you have two POVs and they're told one entire one first, and then you go to the second person and you go back in time and then follow their story. When there's multiple POVs, I tend to prefer they kind of alternate, so you're following both along the way, but that's just a personal preference. I am reserving judgment until I get to the end of this one, but since it's not one that's fully hooking me in, I decided I wanted to pick up another book as well, hopefully something that'll grab me a little bit more. This one, I'm just going to keep going on it. I am liking it enough, but it's one that I'm probably just going to listen to at work and finish up that way because it's a pretty easy one to multitask to. So I rolled again, and finally a slightly bigger number with a 4, and this one took me to spot 18, and the prompt for this one is wrong turn. Go for a drive or a walk to see Halloween decoration. I don't know that my neighborhood has a ton up yet, but Kylie and I will make a point this weekend probably of going out and seeing. We'll at least try to see some decorations. So since that's not a reading prompt, I rolled again, and this time I got a 2, and this brings us into Cameron's section of the board, and the prompt is to either read or watch one of Cameron's recommendations. Now, this turned out to be a struggle. I could not easily find either of the books that were recommended from a library or any source I could get it without spending a bunch of money. So I decided to go and look at the movies. One of them I cannot find on any streaming service, but my library does have one of the movie recommendations, which is The Halloween Tree, which looks like another fun one. So I have put a request in for that. It'll take a while to get to me. It's based on the Ray Bradbury story, so I'm excited to actually watch that one. But still, I don't have a book to read. So one more roll. This time we're back to rolling a 1, and this landed me on one of my squares, which is a little itty bitty Kylie. And this is a spot that basically is a Kylie pick. So I'm giving her 3 books to choose from. One being Clown in a Cornfield 3, The Church of Friendo. This one I just picked up from the library yesterday. It's one I'm eager to get to, and I suspect there will be holds on it, so I can't renew it. I need to get to it in a timely manner. Then I have The Vessel by Adam L.G. Neville. This is one that's been on my shelf for a little while. I think I got this one in a Nightworm subscription, and it's short, so this would be a good pick for that reason. And then last but not least, The Silence for the Dead by Simone St. James. This is an author I've really enjoyed. This is one of her more backlist titles, so it's one that I am hoping to get to, and I know the audio is available for my library, so that also makes this a good option. Okay, we've got our 3 books. We've got our pouty puppy, because I told her she couldn't have them until I told her it was time, but there are treats on the book. So, are you ready, Miss Kylie? Okay. So as you saw, Kylie went for Clown in a Cornfield 3. So I think this is exactly what I wanted. Something that'll be a little more gripping, a little more page turning-y. So I will check back in once I have more updates for you. Okay, I had a very productive reading day today, so I have updates for you. First off, that whole skip spot that I put off earlier, I decided to just go ahead and use a magical readathon book for that, and therefore I did finish This Cursed House House by Del Sandine, and that was the final book that I needed to complete my Magical Readathon TBR, which is great because it means that these last few days of September I can just focus in on Halloween-A-Thon. This is a book that will be included in my ARC attack at the beginning of October, so I will leave a link for that if you do want the review for that one. Then I did read Clown in a Cornfield 3, Church of Friendo, and I'm really sorry to say this one just didn't work for me. I didn't feel the connection really with the rest of the series, and it had such a different vibe to it that it just didn't quite live up to what I was hoping for from it. We're really only following one of the characters that we've previously been following, and there's a huge cast of new people to follow. It's really a split story in two different kind of points of view with a few extra, and I just didn't find myself hooked in by this one. I got to the point where I'm thinking, oh, this must be winding down, and I realized there were still like 5 hours left in the audio, and unfortunately this just wasn't a win. So here's hoping we can improve from here. I did also finish Daughters of Olympus, and this one I liked. I think if I was more in the mood for a Greek retelling or historical kind of setting, I would have liked it a lot more. I think it was well done. I think the characters were really well fleshed out. I think the writing was good. I still didn't love the fact that we saw Demeter for part of the book and then completely switched POV for the rest of the book. That just isn't something that tends to work for me well in books, but I think the author did a good job of showing how bad the men, or I guess male gods in Greek mythology really are to women, and also giving Persephone more personality and more agency in the way she interacts with Hades. There is a sapphic relationship twist to her story that isn't something I've seen personally before, and I think a lot of it was well done. So I am glad that I read it, and I did have fun opening the gifts in the Once Upon a Book Club box, so not a bad time. But with all of that, I do need some new books to start reading because I have a short story collection I've been working on, but other than that, I have absolutely nothing on my currently reading shelf. So for my first roll, I landed on spot 23, and this prompt is Autumn Cozy. Read a book or watch a movie or show that takes place in a small town. And this is absolutely perfect because I have been watching Gilmore Girls, which is always just kind of a fall feeling show for me, and I plan to watch a couple episodes probably before bed tonight, so I'm going to use that for this prompt. So I rolled again, and the prompt that I landed on was in square 27, and that is Caramel Apple. Read a book or watch a movie that combines genres. And this one was initially a struggle for me. I had a couple of ideas, but they're ones that I can't really read until October for various reasons, but I did pick up one, and that is Legacy Witches by Cassidy. And this is one that I received in a Twisted Retreat box and have not gotten to, even though this one was published in 2022, I believe. So I am looking forward to reading this one. It is witches, it is haunting, so I think we're combining some fantasy and horror here. The synopsis starts saying, seeing ghosts and coming from a long line of murderous witches has made life less than sunshine and rainbows for Vienna Roots. When she inherits her family's haunted house, she decides flipping the rundown dump for cash is the smart move, but the ghosts that haunt her have a different plan. So I am eager to get to this one. I think it seems like the appropriate time of year for a witchy haunted house read, but this is only available to me in print. I can't get audio for it, so I decided to do one more roll to see if I could come up with a prompt that will allow me an audiobook, and I rolled my first 6, so we're finally making some progress. We're kind of around the first turn on the board, and this landed me on another shark. So I need to pick an arc for this. So I think the one I'm going to go with is Monstrous Nights by Genoveva Domova, and this one is a gifted audio arc from Macmillan Audio, and it is a sequel to Foul Days, which I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed the audiobook for it, so I was excited to get offered the copy of the sequel. And it's a duology, and it's coming out pretty quickly quickly. The first book didn't come out that long ago, so I love the fact that we're getting the sequel already and everything's still very fresh in my mind. This is a Slavic inspired story, and there's kind of witchcraft, there's magic, there's monsters, there's shadows. It was a good time. There's some humor in there as well. I really enjoyed a lot of the kind of extras that the author put into the story, so I'm excited to read this one. So that adds a couple new things for me to be working on, and it's a couple days yet until October, so I may still be back possibly for another roll before we hit October, but we shall see. I'm back with a couple of quick updates before I go grab some dinner this evening. So first off, I tried to find some fall decor, Halloween decorations. My neighborhood just is not on the ball just yet. So we'll try that again later, but an attempt was made at least to see if anyone had some decorations for Kylie and I to go see. The other update I have is that I finished Monstrous Nights, which is the audiobook that I was working on. So I finished that up to round out my September reading. September was a wonderful reading month. Definitely thanks to this readathon for the ending part of the month, but it does mean that I do want to get another audiobook. So just a few things about Monstrous Nights. It's a sequel. I reviewed the first book. This one I really enjoyed as well. I really like the storytelling aspect of this, the way it draws in some Slavic inspiration, the relationships that come out of it, the kind of genre bending it does with fantasy, with the darkness, the horror elements, all of that. All really good time. This was a very solid 4-star read for me, and the audiobook is fantastic as well. So I went ahead and rolled, and my pumpkin paper die is hiding from me at the moment, so I just pulled one of the new Kylie toy dice that I got to go ahead and roll. And I got a 3, which landed me on space 36. And the prompt for that is Bride of Frankenstein. Read a book written by a woman or watch a movie directed by a woman. Since I was specifically hoping for an audiobook, I looked at what I was coming up on the waiting list for from Libby. And for this one, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite authors, Darcy Coates, when it comes to female written horror. And one of the books that I am hoping to get to is The House Next Door. This is actually one of the books that I have on my spooky season challenge from Cassidy at Covers with Cassidy. So it's a priority for me to get to this one, and it's a unique sounding kind of horror ghost story because it's a haunted house story, but the haunted house actually is next door to our narrator. She is living next door to this house. People keep leaving, fleeing into the night, screaming. It sounds like a really interesting take on a haunted house. I don't know how much we're going to be inside the house itself versus just observing it, but I'm really eager to read this one, and it is now on my Halloween-A-Thon TBR. I'm back because I have finished The House Next Door by Darcy Coates. I meant to maybe consider doing a halfway update, but honestly, I just put the audiobook on today while I was doing some stuff that didn't require too much brain power, and before I knew it, I was 70% of the way through and didn't want to stop. So you're just getting final thoughts. And those are positive. I think I said that I wasn't sure how much time was going to be spent in the haunted house because the POV character is living next door to it. And we do get a decent amount of time of her being in the house. And there's a new resident who's moving in. The neighbor next door says she's eternally curious. We might call her the nosy type, but she's generally a good person and a good friend to the new resident there, and I really enjoyed following in her POV. The new person who's moving in is in a position where she wants to make this work, and even though the house is haunted and she therefore got it for a steal, she's kind of hiding out. The house itself has its own personality and its own perception of her being there, and I really like how everything played out. As with most Darcy Coates, the atmosphere in here was really well done. It had good kind of haunting vibes, and having that displacement to next door for some of the action made a really interesting way of telling the story. So this was a great read. I gave it 4 stars. It was super fast, and I enjoyed the audio for this one as well. So now I need to roll another time and see what I get. So as you saw, I did find my pumpkin dice again. So we're rolling that. that, although it didn't go the best. It rolled a 1, which rolled totally off the surface I'm rolling on, but I don't think anyone expects me cheating by saying I got a 1. So that 1 put me on the space with a Kylie in a ghost costume. And what that signifies is that I need to read one of the books for one of my other spooky challenges. So with that, I'm including both the seasonal spooky challenge from Cassidy at Covers with Cassidy and the horror bingo brought to us by Sarah from Wicked Reading. And for this one, I'm going to go with Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano. This one I had on the seasonal spooky challenge because I needed a book with tech on the cover, and this has a VHS tape on the cover. I also put this in for mixed media, although I think I've already checked that one off with a different book, but this is one I am looking forward to getting into. It's set on an island that is apparently obsessed with the year 1994. That's really all I know. We're following a character who I think goes there from the outside to investigate her husband going missing. No, she finds the name of the island written on her deceased son's floor. So she goes there to investigate, and I've been very intrigued. I've had this one since it came out, and I don't know much more about that. It does have mixed media in here, and I guess I will find out once I get going what this is all about. I have training this morning, and I'm not looking forward to that, but that's 4 hours of my morning, and then I took the rest of the day off work. So it's nice because I don't have to go into the office. Got Kylie over here doing some neighborhood watch, hopefully quietly, so I can give you a book update. I'm drinking out of my Luke's mug because it is prime Gilmore Girls season, and I'm really enjoying my rewatch as usual. So I'm nearing the halfway point in Dead 11, and this book is just so much fun. I think I still don't quite entirely know what's going on. So we're following, I guess, a few different timelines. In the way the book opens, we see Willow, who is a mother who has lost her son, and she's living in grief, but also a bit in denial. And she's cleaning up his room at one point, and she sees Clifford Island written on his floor. She has no idea what this means, and she goes into a deep dive investigating this, and eventually goes off to the island to look into what happened to her son. And then we're also following her brother, who knows that Willow is missing and believes Willow is dead. But in his own investigation, he sees her doing this deep dive research into Clifford Island and writing lots of stuff down. And so in the present day, he's now gone off to this island to try to find out what happened to his sister. And we're jumping back and forth a bit in time. We've got a countdown when it comes to Willow's portions into the countdown until she disappears. In the present day, we're following the brother, Harper, and we also are getting the POV of Lily, who is a teenager who lives on this island and therefore is more in the know as to what's going on this island. And this island's just weird. Everyone on this island feels like they're stuck in 1994. They are wearing old clothes. They generally avoid using modern technology. They listen to music from the 90s and earlier. Their history classes only go to a certain point. The truck bombing at the World Trade Center was the worst ever terrorism in America. And Lily, of course, knows more than this, but is in a place where no one else can acknowledge that things have happened since 1994. It's weird. It's very weird. They're all told they have to have their curtains closed at night, and the reasoning for that is a big question. Harper, as an outsider, and Willow before him as an outsider, aren't getting all the answers because they're new and they're not familiar faces. The people on this island have the ability to leave the island, like they can play a sports tournament on the mainland, but they're still so insular. It's very interesting and it's very weird. There's something looming kind of on the outside, and get really good moment of tension from that. So I'm really excited to keep reading it, and I'll be back once I've finished it with final thoughts. But the media is working well for me. The book general's mixing well for me. Just the questioning and coming up theories and all of that, really good. So this is going well, and I'll be back later. I'm going to do a quick update because I think I left Legacy Witches out when I was doing some updates the other day. I did finish this one and generally liked it. It wasn't great. It winds up kind of a mid 3-star. I liked the combination of the witchiness this. Kylie's destroying things next to me, so you're hearing background noise probably. But I liked kind of the darkness. I thought the uniqueness of having this whole murderous witch line, the demonic house, the legacy of witches and their ghosts lingering was all really interesting. It didn't wow me, and it is book one in a series, and I don't think I'm going to continue, partly because it's only available in print. If it was an audiobook, I might for the curiosity, but it took me a little bit too long to read just because it wasn't drawing me in quite as much as I would have liked. So overall, I'm glad that I finally got to this one. It's one I've kept eyeing because the cover keeps grabbing my attention. So I'm glad to have finished this and be able to knock one of my subscription boxes out, and I'll go ahead and leave that here. Alrighty, I am back with an update because I have now finished Dead 11 and I had so much fun with this one. It is the type of book that is less scary, although it does have moments. It's really about being unsettled. You know there's weird things going on. You don't 100% know why. And following along, particularly in Willow and her brother Harper's heads, because they're witnessing everything in this place and not understanding it, but knowing also that something weird is going on. And I think that really worked. It was a great way to tell this story. We do get a few other POVs. We get Lily, who is one of kids who has grown up in this environment. We get some other POVs later on in the book that we didn't necessarily have at the beginning, I don't believe. So I think this just is really well done. I think from the very opening kind of chapter, it really shows you how weird this place is, and you get hints, and the author's really good at doling out hints along the way and slow reveals and keeping you hooked for the next one. And in the end, didn't quite give me 5-star feels, but it gave me close. So I'm giving this one a 4.5. And I would definitely recommend this, like weird and really unique kind of storytelling type of horror. So this was a good one. And then let the rolling begin. Okay, so to start with, I went ahead and rolled my dice and I landed on 40, which is just a bunch of hocus pocus. Watch a Disney or family friendly movie with spooky vibes. I don't know what I'm going to do for this just yet. I need to figure that out, but it's not a book to read, so I decided to keep rolling. And I didn't get very far. So I rolled a 1 and that brought me to spot 41, which is Bubble Bubble, Toil and Trouble, enjoy a fall themed cocktail, mocktail, or beverage. And again, I'm not exactly sure what I'll go for this. I think probably, as I'm not a huge apple or pumpkin cocktail flavored type of person, I may just go ahead and go with a pumpkin spice cake Nespresso pod in the morning. So that'll knock that square off. And then my next roll similarly landed me in a space without a book because I landed on the little movie reel, which is a spot I put on just as a watch something. So either a TV or a movie. And since I have a couple movies now to watch to catch up on some prompts, I am going to go ahead and count the fact that I am currently launching back into my rewatch and continuation of Supernatural. And I will be probably watching the first episode of season 8 tonight before bed at least. So that's that square. And then finally on our fourth roll, I got to square 44, which says Grinning Ghosts. Read a book or watch a movie that features ghosts, a haunting, or a haunted house. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and read a book. Okay, for my ghost or haunting book, I'm going to go with Ghost Tamer, which is by Meredith R. Lyons. This is a Twisted Retreat edition. Very pretty. I beat up the dust jacket a little bit, but check out that end paper in there, very cool, and a naked hardcover under here as well, and a reverse dust jacket also. This one, we're following a character who I believe is the only survivor of a disastrous train wreck. Her best friend has died, but she now has the ability to see ghosts, and apparently there is one ghost who's been attached to her all her life and another is determined to destroy her. So this will be working on my effort to get caught up, which will never happen, but eventually, maybe someday, probably not, with my subscription box books. So this one seems very appropriate, and I can get the audio from Hoopla, so I can read in one format or another and let you know how it is. All right, I am back with another update, and that is that I finished Ghost Tamer. I thought about giving a halfway update and kind of blew past the halfway point, listening to the audio last night and getting some stuff done around the house, and so I just went ahead and finished it. I generally had a good time with this one. I think it was an easy multitasking book. I don't necessarily know that I would have flown through it if I was physically reading the whole thing, but in general, I liked this one quite a bit. I think this is a book that handles a lot of things pretty well. I think it handled grief quite well because we're dealing with a main character who is in a train wreck with her best friend. The best friend doesn't survive. No one survives except for her. She mysteriously somehow makes it off this train, and no one can really explain why. She remembers being carried off, but for other reasons, there seems to be proof that no one was there to carry her off. And that's weird. And then the other thing that's weird is she's suddenly seeing ghosts, and there's one who is with her, who has been with her apparently pretty much her whole life, and she's never been able to see him before. She doesn't know why this ghost is connected to her. The ghost doesn't know why he's connected to her. The ghost's name is Casper, and yes, he is a friendly ghost, and that does get called out in the book. I don't know why his name is Casper, but it is, and he follows her around constantly. She's now able to see other ghosts as well, and that is something she's having to learn to deal with. In addition to learning to deal with her grief, she had been a comedian before, but for obvious reasons she's not feeling very funny at the moment, and there's just a lot of upset in her life. And then on top of this new ability also comes with a danger because there is a ghostly entity of some sort that is attacking her, and it's causing her actual physical harm, presumably because of her connection with the spirit realm now that she survived this train wreck. But she needs to find out who or what this entity is so she can find out how to get rid of it. And it leads her on a big path of discovery from her own life, her family's life, and there's a lot that goes on in here. It was a very easy listen. It was a very easy read, one that I could follow quite well while multitasking like I talked about. So I think it worked well for me in that respect. The characters weren't necessarily as all fleshed out as I would have liked. There were a few kind of villainy characters who weren't super developed. I couldn't tell you necessarily that much about some of the side characters. Our main character, Rayleigh, I think we got to know pretty well because we're in her head, we're feeling her grief, we're following her journey, all from her POV. And so I did like her a lot. I like the fact that she is struggling, but determined to find out what is going on, and I like that determination. And the plot went into some interesting directions. There were some twists I did not expect. There's a lot in here in terms of trigger warnings, including of course grief and death, and also discussions of alcoholism and abuse, and some of her family history gets pretty dark as well. So definitely worth checking out some trigger warning lists for this particular book. But overall, I had a good time with it. I think it winds up being like a 3.5 for me. It was a good time. Not a new favorite, but this is an author I would definitely try to read from again in the future. But with that, let's do another roll. Okay, and that landed us on another color wheel spinner. So spinning the wheel to get a color for a book. And let's see what we get. Screen recording and spin. And we got purple. So I feel like that's a good Halloween color, although not necessarily a book color I have a ton of, but let's see. Okay, actually that did not take me long at all. I've got Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Tersch, and this is one I've had from Book of the Month. I picked it up as an add-on. I didn't quite buy it when it was first a listing, but it's one that several people that I know and trust have really enjoyed, so I've been excited to get to it, and it definitely pulls off purple quite well. I don't remember anything about the actual plot, but it says, in this spellbinding debut novel, two estranged half-sisters tasked with guarding their family's library of magical books must work together to unravel a deadly secret in the heart of their collection. A tale of familial loyalty and betrayal in the pursuit of magic and power. So we've got sisters, we've got magical books. Bookish books always work well for me, or I guess often work well for me. So I'm excited to check this one out, and hopefully I can finish it soon and be back for another roll. roll. Okay, I'm about a third of the way into Inkblood Sister Scribe, and it's a little bit early for an initial update. I usually try to make it around the halfway point, but honestly, I just kind of want to binge read the rest of this and not have to worry about tracking when I get there. So I've been listening to this one on audiobook, largely in the car, and I've been having a good time with this. I think it is really easy to absorb, but also has a lot of good lore to it, and it's keeping me very invested. We start out following two different sisters, and they are estranged from each other. Joanna was there when their father died. He was killed by a book. He is, or was, the keeper of this kind of magical library of magical books, and something happened. He left some notes for his daughter, not to let her mother in, to let her sister know, but the note kind of cuts off. She doesn't know if the note was even finished, and she's really not in much touch with her sister. Her sister, Esther, has lived on the run, basically. Her father gave her a warning that if she doesn't move every year on a particular day, then the people who killed her mother are going to come after her. She and Joanna are actually half-sisters. The stepmother is the one the father said not to let in, and she always held a grudge about how much attention he put into the library and into the books. Joanna and her mother are now estranged because Joanna is now taking care of the library and the book, and her mother's beginning to resent that as well and trying to get into the house. And there's a lot of complicated relationships happening here. The books themselves are very interesting, and the way they're tied to kind of some of the mythologies related to blood. There's a third POV in here as well that is not in the synopsis, so I don't want to say too much about it, but I'm very curious how that POV is going to wind up tying in with the sisters and how that's going to play out. Esther's most recent place she's been has been in a very remote, like, research location, and she has now passed the date she was meant to leave, and that's because she's met a woman and she fallen in love, basically, and she's, for the first real time, contemplating whether it's okay to stay, and she knows that it's not. She's seeing signs of things that are going wrong already, or very early on in the book. All of this just has me really hooked, really intrigued, and having a great time. Hi, buddy. Yeah, am I talking too much? Probably. Kylie wants me to go get dinner and feed her, so I'm gonna keep reading this one. I am really excited to keep going with it. I think the audiobook has been fantastic, and now that I'm at home, I'll probably pick it up physically as well and just kind of keep binging it. So it's not the shortest of books. I don't think I'm probably going to be able to finish it tonight, but hopefully by tomorrow I'll be able to get you the final update on this one. And then I realized I'm now more than halfway, just past the halfway point on the board for Halloween-A-Thon. So I think this is probably a good time to wrap up this particular vlog after I finish this book. So I'll be back with one more update, and then there will be a second installment coming because I still have half a board to get through, and this vlog's already kind of getting long. So that's the plan, and I'll be back very soon. I am back because I have finished Inkblood Sister Scribe, and I had a fantastic time with this one. I thought it was really fun. The lore around the magical books and how they worked and how they were controlled was really well done. There were some mystery elements to it that I really enjoyed. I really liked the sister relationship between the two women and how that was so damaged in a lot of ways by some of the secrets and some of the things their father had done and the ties to the library, but also how they were capable of starting to work through that. And it wasn't necessarily an instant fix, but you saw that progression happening. And I think the multiple POVs worked really well for me. The two sisters plus the extra one that we're getting in here, I think did well to kind of show different aspects of this magical book system and how it worked, how it should work, how it's not working, all of those types of things. And I really appreciate a magic system where there's a cost to the magic, and there certainly is here. So I think this is one I would definitely recommend. I thought the audiobook was fantastic, and the book overall, generally fantastic. I landed on a 4.5 for this one. Didn't quite give me 5-star feels, but it was close. So this was one that I really enjoyed. Definitely a highlight for this vlog for me. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. I'll do my next roll very, very soon in a new vlog. And I will be continuing to make my way around the board. And maybe I'll get less ones and more bigger numbers. And we'll get through it a little faster, but it's still pretty early in the month. As of when I'm concluding this, it's only the 12th. So I feel fairly confident I can make it to the end of the board, still rolling one dice as I go. So check back soon for a new vlog to find out if I actually reach the end of the board by the end of the month. And with that, I will wrap it up here. Let me know down below, have you been participating in Halloween-A-Thon? If so, what's been your favorite prompt to do so far? What's been your favorite read, your favorite watch? Any of those things, let me know. Have you read any of the books that I did? Watched any of the movies that I did? I would love to hear all the things. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, leave me a pumpkin or jack-o'-lantern emoji down below. I would surely appreciate it if you could hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you're interested in more of my content, more of my readathon participation, more of Kylie in costumes, all of that. But I will leave you here and see you real soon in a new video.